So I'm going to talk about how to answer the academic task 1 question. And this particular video goes into the more overall skills and strategies that you need to tackle the question. Of course, the other videos refer to specific skills and language that you need in the task 1, whereas this is more of your overall approach. Now, basically, in this video, there are 2 things that you need to do. Number 1 is write an overview, and number 2 is to describe the details. And these 2 areas are what I'm going to cover in quite a lot of detail now. So let's look at the overview, because the overview is one of the most important things in your task 1 answer. So what is an overview? An overview is a few sentences, usually in a paragraph of its own, and it describes the key features of the graph or the diagram that you are writing about. You need to write what the main message of the graph is. So when you look at that graph, you'll see that there are a number of important trends or statistics or changes that are clearly shown. And the first thing you need to do is to describe what they are. So to understand the overview, the easiest way to do this is to look at some examples, and that's what we're going to do. So let's start with a bar chart. Now, this is just a simplified bar chart. You can see that in the top left corner it says men who smoke and women who smoke. So the grey is the number of men who smoke, and the red is the number of women who smoke. And you see that there are 4 regions: USA, Asia, Australia and Europe. So the first thing to do is to look at that bar chart and think, well, what are the most obvious things? And you can see that, well, in USA, Australia and Europe, the grey is higher than the red. And yet in Asia, the red is much higher than the grey. So therefore, your overview is going to look something like this. In 3 regions, namely USA, Australia and Europe, it is clear that at least twice as many men smoke than women. However, in Asia, the trend is the opposite. In this region, nearly 3 times as many women as men smoke. And there you have it. So let's look at another example, and this one with a line chart. So here you've got product X, product Y, product Z. X is grey, Y is red, and Z is the blue one. And you can see that they are sales in units over a 4-year period: 2009, 2010, 2011, and 2012. So once again, look at that graph and think, well, what are the main trends? And as I'm sure you can see, the red and the grey, product X and Y, sales are increasing, whereas the blue has a downward trend. So your overview is going to look like this. The most obvious trend that can be identified is that sales of product X and Y increased steadily between 2009 and 2011. On the other hand, sales of product Z were noticeably unsuccessful, with numbers falling steadily in these 4 years. So that's it for the overview there. Let's look at a third example now, and we have pie charts in this one. So in this pie chart, you've got 2 pie charts, 2010, 2015, and you've got different types of transportation that people used: cars, bus, train, foot, and by bicycle. So with this particular graph where you have pie charts, of course, the main trends will be the changes in the pieces of the bar chart. And you can see that you've got the increase in cars, you've got the decrease in buses, and then you've got the train increase and so on. So basically, you'd write something like this. The most conspicuous trend shown is that there is an expected increase in the percentage of people who use the car and the train to travel to work between 2010 and 2015. Other modes of transport, such as the bus and walking, are expected to reduce in this period. So that's some examples using bar charts, line charts and pie charts of overviews. Once again, as I said, look at that graph, think what are the biggest changes or the biggest trends, and write those in a paragraph of, it should be about 3 or 4 sentences to describe those most important features. And that would be your overview paragraph. Now let's just look at some useful language you can use. So you've got things like one of the distinctive features, 2 of the most noticeable features, a conspicuous feature, and so on to start your sentence. Or another way of doing it would be with this: looking at the graph, it is clearly shown that. Looking at the graph, it is evident that. It is obvious that. So these are quite useful sentences that you can begin your overview paragraph with. Okay, so you must include the overview. If you don't have an overview, that will affect your score in a negative way. So this is one of the first things that you need to do when you're writing your task 1. However, an overview is not enough, and it is not the whole answer. It's simply one paragraph in your task 1 response. So as I said at the start of the video, the second thing that you need to do is to describe the details. Just before I leave a discussion of the overview, though, I should point out that there is a difference between overview and description. Do not confuse them. An overview is not a description, and you need to be aware of the difference. So let me give you some examples of descriptions first. The graph shows us information about 5 regions of the world and their production of coffee. The diagram explains the changes that have been made to the Library of Old Town between 2005 and 2010. So that's a description, and you can give a description, but as I say, it is not an overview. And the difference is that the overview gives you the key trends, the most important message, whereas a description has no message that the graph is telling us. And that's the difference. So here's the examples of overviews. Of all the regions shown, the production of coffee was the largest in South America. Between 2005 and 2010, the Library of Old Town experienced a major expansion in terms of facilities and available space. So you can see that there is quite a clear difference between the information given in a description and an overview. Now, you can write a description, but that is not enough alone. You must include the overview in terms of the key trends. So don't forget that. Okay, so I was talking about the second part because the overview is perhaps the anchor of your response, but it is not enough because you need to go into the details. So let's look at how to describe the details in the graph. Now, the first thing is to organize your description of details into at least 2 or 3 paragraphs. So imagine you've written the overview, and now you need to go go on and describe the details more specifically. So here we have the bar chart again for men and women who smoke in USA, Asia, Australia and Europe. And of course the details would refer to numbers of men and women in the USA, numbers of men and women in Asia, numbers of men and women in Australia and in Europe. Our overview didn't go into the real specific details, and the next paragraphs should. Now, I won't go into examples here. I want to talk about paragraphs, really. So there are basically two choices if you look at this one. Whoops. Okay, so there are basically two choices if you look at this one. You could do it by region, so one paragraph about the USA, one paragraph about Asia, one paragraph about Australia, one paragraph about Europe. Or you could do it by category. One paragraph about men in all of the 4 regions, and then another paragraph about women in all of the 4 regions, and that would make 2 paragraphs. Both are theoretically possible. In this example, probably the men-women would be the most sensible, because by region there's very little to write about. But the point is, you do need to think about which is the most clearest way to arrange your paragraphs. Let's have another look at another example. So we're back with the line graph for sales of product X, Y, and Z. Okay, so you've got 2 choices here, haven't you? You could do it by year, where you have the paragraphs there, which would be, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 circles. I know you can't see the years here, but you can see there are 4 points on the line. Or you could do it by product. Product X, product Y, product Z. Now in this case, both are possible, but I would say that by product is probably the clearest way. Let's look at the pie charts. So once again, with pie charts, you could organize the paragraphs in terms of by chart. So you could describe the situation in 2010, then make a new paragraph and describe the situation in 2015. Or you could do it by category. So you have cars, bus, train, foot, and bicycle. So that would be 5 separate paragraphs. You might add an additional paragraph if you're comparing them, but it depends there. So overall, your answer is going to begin with the overview, and then you go into the details, and the details are divided into 2 or 3 different paragraphs. There are a few warnings that are important for you to know. So be careful of these. You should not copy the language from the question paper. If you copy from the question, then that will be deducted. It will not be rated. So you're wasting your time and energy if you copy. What you need to do is you need to write things and describe things in your own words. The second point is, do not explain the data. So if you remember with our bar chart, we had men and women who smoke. If you try to explain why more men than women smoke in USA or something, or why more women than men smoke in Asia, then you will get a penalty. That is because the information is not shown in the graph. Therefore, you should not explain it. Another point is, do not write less than 150 words. Remember that the instructions are to write at least 150 words. So if you write below 150 words, you will get a penalty. And actually, to get a high score, meaning to get a band 7 or higher, probably you'll need to write at least 250 words. So if your answer just meets the minimum requirement of 150, probably you're not going to get the best score. Now, the next point is do not describe the data inaccurately. Do not make a mistake there. Double check that your reference to the numbers, the percentages are accurate. Another thing is do not make a list. As I've talked quite a lot about paragraphs, and you need to write it as a whole paragraph rather than just listing the points in a kind of bullet form way. Finally, do not forget important facts and figures. All of these graphs, they provide percentages or numbers or years, and you must give reference to those kind of things. So that is how to answer the task 1, some overall tips and strategies. This is a very important video, so hopefully you should go through this again, take some notes, and make sure you follow these instructions. I'll just give you a quick summary of this video. Number 1, make sure you give a clear overview in your answer. Number 2, arrange your data in paragraphs. And number 3, avoid the common mistakes that I've been talking about rather. So there it is. That is how to answer the task 1 of the academic writing module.